Welcome to The Conspiracy Tapes, where we explore humanity's most profound question. Not how we live, but how we might end. I'm your host, and today we're embarking on a scientific journey through the various ways our story, both individual and collective, might conclude. I'm your host, Ryan Martin, and let's start with an uncomfortable truth. You're going to die. I'm going to die. Everyone listening to this will eventually cease to exist. Despite all our medical advances that might stretch human life beyond a century, immortality remains what writer Jorge Luis Borges called more of a nightmare than a dream in his story, The Immortal. Life, as harsh as it sounds, is fundamentally a terminal condition. But here's the bigger question that keeps scientists awake at night. Are we collectively doomed as a species? And if so, how? Today, we're going to explore the scientific perspectives that suggest the answer might be yes, and the fascinating, terrifying, and sometimes surprising ways it might happen. If you're fascinated by deep questions, mortality, the fate of civilization, or what it truly means to exist, don't let the conversation end here. Skoob puts thousands of the world's sharpest minds in your pocket, with over 1,500 expertly curated episodes inspired by the latest research on science, philosophy, and the fate of humanity. Whether you're searching for answers or just better questions, Skoob is your starting point. Download Skoob from the App Store or Play Store and keep confronting the big questions, one episode at a time. Let's get started, because facing the truth just might be the first step to understanding it. Our existence is what eminent physicist Murray Gell-Mann described as a cosmic accident. Think about that for a moment. According to our best scientific understanding, the universe began approximately 13.7 billion years ago with the Big Bang. On our little planet Earth, a perfect storm of conditions, ultraviolet radiation, lightning, and chemistry created the building blocks for life around 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. From those first primitive cells, sexual reproduction emerged about 2 billion years ago among simple multicellular organisms, accelerating evolution. Fast forward to roughly 6 million years ago, when a genetic mutation in chimpanzees led to our earliest human-like ancestors. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, appeared relatively recently, between 200,000 to 100,000 years ago. We dominated other human species about 30,000 years ago and spread across the planet by around 13,000 years ago. This required what scientists call Goldilocks conditions. Everything had to be just right. Not too hot, not too cold, just perfect for life. But here's the sobering reality. These conditions won't last forever. Consider this statistic that should make anyone pause. About 99.9% of all species that have ever existed on Earth are now extinct. As researchers Nick Bostrom and Milan Cherkovich point out, the extinction of intelligent species has happened before on Earth. It's naive to think it won't happen again. Even if we dodge every asteroid, prevent every nuclear war, and survive every pandemic, Earth itself has an expiration date. In approximately 3.5 billion years, our sun will become so bright that Earth's biosphere will become completely inhospitable. Complex life, beings like us, will likely vanish even sooner, within 0.9 to 1.5 billion years, as planetary conditions become unlivable. This brings us to one of the most unsettling theories in modern science, the Doomsday Argument, formulated by astrophysicist Brandon Carter and philosopher John Leslie. It's a statistical argument that suggests we might be living much closer to the end of human history than we'd like to believe. Here's the logic. Statistically, any human should expect to exist somewhere in the middle of the total span of human history, past, present, and future. Sounds reasonable, right? But when you factor in our rapid population growth, this creates a disturbing implication. If humanity were to survive for millions of years, with our population continuing to grow, the total number of humans who would ever live would be astronomical. That would mean you and I, living right now, would be among the very first humans in the entire span of human existence, an extremely unlikely statistical position. But if human existence concludes within a few centuries, allowing us to be somewhere in the middle of our species' timeline rather than at the very beginning, the statistics make much more sense. It's a chilling mathematical suggestion that we might be living in humanity's final act rather than its opening scene. The argument becomes even more complex when we consider the possibility of simulated realities. If civilizations survive long enough, they might create numerous detailed simulations of their past, including simulations of people like us. But this raises the question, would all civilizations choose to create such simulations? Perhaps some societies would find it too dangerous, worrying about simulations breaking free and compromising their real world. Others might consider it unethical to create digital beings who could suffer. Still others might simply have different priorities, finding other pursuits more meaningful than recreating their past. Despite these concerns, the incentives for creating simulations are compelling. Human curiosity, scientific inquiry, and our quest for understanding drive us to simulate environments and observe outcomes. Scientists already engage in smaller-scale simulations to extract valuable insights. The practical advantages are obvious. Simulating decisions could offer strategic benefits, helping individuals or societies make more informed choices. There might even be moral motivations, like creating environments where positive experiences significantly outnumber negative ones. Given our capability to create simulations and the compelling reasons to do so, it would be remarkable if few civilizations ultimately refrained from such endeavors. This creates what researchers call the simulation hypothesis, the possibility that we ourselves might be living in a simulation created by our descendants. But let's step back from theoretical statistics and examine some very real doomsday scenarios that scientists have studied in detail. One of the most thoroughly researched potential endings for human civilization emerged during the Cold War, nuclear winter. In May and June of 1976, a fascinating scientific exchange took place. A group of international scientists visited the Soviet Union for 3 weeks to discuss weather modification research and cloud physics. The Soviets were implementing cloud seeding across approximately 5 million hectares in regions like the Caucasus, Moldavia, and Central Asia. The discussions were constructive and friendly, with scientists sharing information about hailstorm patterns and fog dispersal techniques. But beneath these collegial exchanges lurked a much darker purpose. While weather modification was interesting, the paramount concern was modeling the potential impact of a nuclear conflict between the United States and Soviet Union. A 1975 study had emphasized the importance of understanding nuclear warfare's consequences as a deterrent against using such devastating weapons. The projections were terrifying. A nuclear conflict would create prolonged periods where massive fires would block sunlight from reaching Earth's surface. Agricultural production in the Northern Hemisphere would be nearly obliterated, leaving survivors without access to food. As one scholar noted, the most contentious climate issue of the 1980s wasn't carbon dioxide levels. It was nuclear winter. In 1983, researchers in both countries published studies that captured public attention and heightened fears about the superpower rivalry. Richard Turco led a team that published a groundbreaking paper in the journal Science, utilizing new data and advanced models, including studies of Martian dust storms, to analyze the consequences of sooty smoke from wildfires and urban fires. Their findings were apocalyptic. While most of the world's population might survive the initial nuclear exchange, a significant military engagement would likely lead to substantial surface darkening lasting weeks, sub-freezing land temperatures persisting for months, and dramatic shifts in weather patterns. The result would be a severe nuclear winter. A subsequent Soviet study confirmed similar findings, predicting that nuclear war would envelop Earth in black smoke, cutting off sunlight and causing major temperature drops. Fresh water would freeze, harvests would fail, ecosystems would destabilize, and widespread extinctions would occur across all forms of life: animals, plants, and microorganisms. However, U.S. intelligence analysts were skeptical. They argued that Soviet research drew heavily on American ideas and data, and that Soviet scientists consistently reported more extreme climate changes than comparable Western studies. U.S. assessments labeled the Soviet calculations as overly simplistic, relying on computer models that required 40 hours on outdated BESM-6 computers, compared to 8 minutes on contemporary American Cray 1 machines. Some suspected Moscow was orchestrating a propaganda campaign to bolster disarmament movements and reduce military spending, all aligned with Soviet interests. Yet, despite these suspicions, the scenarios proposed by Turco and colleagues suggested surface temperatures could drop to minus 17 degrees Celsius within 30 days of a nuclear attack, with sub-freezing conditions lasting approximately 3 months and returning to normal only after about a year. Later, more accurate modeling in the United States recalibrated these assumptions, proposing a nuclear autumn rather than a nuclear winter. But the apocalyptic nature of the scenario had already captured public imagination, becoming a prevalent end-of-world narrative that resonated with other global calamities of the 1980s: drought and famine in Ethiopia, the AIDS crisis, and the Chernobyl disaster. Within the Soviet Union, serious voices acknowledged the nuclear threat. Physicist Sergei Kapitsa, son of Nobel laureate Pyotr Kapitsa, drew parallels to the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora during a U.S. Senate discussion in December 1983. He referenced Lord Byron's poem Darkness, written the year after the eruption, which described the pervasive darkness that followed. Just as Byron's poem captured the atmospheric devastation of a volcanic eruption, Kapitsa warned of the dire consequences of nuclear conflict. While humans have created the potential for nuclear winter, space has been bombarding us with potentially civilization-ending projectiles for billions of years. Asteroid and comet impacts represent one of the few doomsday scenarios we can actually prepare for, if we choose to invest in the necessary technology. Researcher Chapman, one of the most prolific writers on this subject, presented a comprehensive analysis in his paper, How a Near-Earth Object Might Affect Society, at a 2003 conference in Italy. He examined 6 potential impact scenarios, beginning with a prescient observation. The combination of increasing near-Earth object discoveries and media sensationalism would propel asteroid concerns into active emergency management planning. His prediction proved remarkably accurate. Media outlets often report distant asteroid passes as near misses, stoking fears about catastrophic impacts. However, Chapman argues against exaggerating the financial costs of preparation, noting that many consequences of asteroid collisions, tsunamis, earthquakes, fires, are already part of existing disaster response planning. The additions to civil defense would mostly involve relatively low-cost marginal add-ons. Let's walk through Chapman's impact categories, starting small and building to the truly terrifying scenarios. The smallest celestial bodies, those under a few meters in diameter, pose no practical concern. They actually provide spectacular entertainment for sky watchers, producing brilliant fireballs when burning up in our atmosphere. natural fireworks more impressive than any 4th of July display. Bodies measuring 10 to 30 meters in diameter, which Chapman estimates might occur only 6 times per century, usually cause minimal damage like broken windows. They explode at such high altitudes that they pose no significant threat to life on the ground. The next category, 30 to 100 meters in range, brings us to Tunguska-level events. Should such a body detonate in the atmosphere, it would create shock waves strong enough to topple trees, destroy wooden structures, and ignite fires within a 10-kilometer radius. Over a densely populated area, human casualties could occur. Chapman estimates a 40% chance of such an event happening in any given century. Yet historically, no such explosion has caused recorded human fatalities. This could mean humanity is overdue for such an event, or perhaps Chapman's estimate is overly cautious. Since these explosions are unpredictable in location, they're statistically more likely to occur over oceans or deserts than over densely populated urban centers. Chapman concludes that planning for such modest disasters is impractical beyond public education, and the cost of telescopic surveys capable of detecting such small bodies would be prohibitively expensive, what he calls the Ultimate Astronomer's Full Employment Act. Moving up the scale, celestial bodies between 100 and 300 meters in diameter could either explode at low altitude or impact the ground, resulting in regionally devastating consequences. Chapman provides a modest 1% chance per century for such an event. A body between 300 meters and 1 kilometer, a flying mountain, could obliterate a small nation, releasing energy 10 times greater than the most powerful thermonuclear bomb ever tested. Hitting a populated area, the death toll could reach hundreds of thousands. Chapman calculates a 0.2% chance per century for this scenario. A significantly larger asteroid or comet, 1 to 3 kilometers in diameter, holds potential for major regional destruction, possibly threatening civilization itself. The chances, 0.02% per century. Impact from a body larger than 3 kilometers could thrust Earth into a new dark age, lethally impacting most human population, though this remains extremely remote with less than 1 chance in 50,000 per century. Finally, a catastrophic impact from a body greater than 10 kilometers would likely lead to mass extinction. Think dinosaurs 66 million years ago. The probability remains at an extremely low threshold, but the consequences would be absolute. Despite these low probabilities, experts including Chapman agree that investing government funds in asteroid defense is both prudent and essential. Unlike many other doomsday scenarios, this is one where early detection and potentially deflection technology could make the difference between survival and extinction. Here's a fundamental problem with preparing for doomsday. Life would be significantly less bewildering if disasters were predictable, but they're not. Throughout history, writers and theorists have attempted to find patterns in catastrophic events through religious, demographic, generational, and monetary cyclical theories. These theories offer ways to anticipate disasters and ideally mitigate their impacts, but their effectiveness remains limited. The limitation stems from what we might call the Cassandra problem. In Greek mythology, Cassandra was cursed to predict the future accurately but never be believed. Similarly, those who promote cyclical theories and unconventional insights often struggle to convince others of their predictions. They perceive forthcoming disasters but face skepticism and disbelief, unable to persuade others to take preventive action, much like Cassandra's inability to avert Troy's doom. The primary reason these modern Cassandras struggle is their lack of precision. While they may sense that disaster is imminent, they can rarely specify when it will occur. Some disasters can be seen as predictable surprises, or gray rhinos, events that are visible yet often ignored until they become unavoidable. At times, these gray rhinos transform into black swans, unexpected and seemingly unprecedented events often described as unforeseeable. Black swan events like pandemics, earthquakes, wars, and financial crises are characterized by power laws rather than typical probability distributions. Unlike normal events that follow bell curve patterns, black swans appear as rare, major occurrences amidst numerous minor ones, making their timing and magnitude particularly challenging to forecast. Consider living near the San Andreas Fault. Everyone knows about the potential for the big one, a massive earthquake. However, precisely when or how severe it will be remains unknown. This unpredictability extends to human-made calamities like wars, revolutions, and financial crises, which, despite lower death tolls, can be equally disruptive. There's an even more extreme category: Dragon Kings, events so grand they defy predictability modeled by power laws. These phenomena fall under the domain of uncertainty rather than calculable risks. The complexity of modern global systems contributes to environments conducive to stochastic behavior, nonlinear relationships, and fat-tailed distributions, where improbable events occur more frequently than expected. Disasters don't occur in isolation. Pandemics spawn economic crises, which trigger political upheaval, which can lead to social collapse. These cascades or chain reactions are more pronounced in our increasingly interconnected world, where a supply chain disruption in one country can cause shortages globally, where financial panic in one market can crash economies worldwide, where a viral outbreak in one city can become a global pandemic in weeks. This interconnectedness makes prediction even more challenging because we're not just trying to forecast individual events, but complex systems of interacting variables that can amplify small changes into massive consequences. If exploring the psychological roots of belief systems and groupthink intrigues you, don't stop here. Hop on to the Skoob app now. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe this channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. Sharing the show helps amplify these important conversations and keeps our curiosity pushing the boundaries of what we know. Let's keep questioning, because sometimes the real story is about why we believe it all. The unpredictability of disasters hasn't stopped humans from trying to pinpoint exactly when the world will end, often with dangerous consequences. Doomsday cults represent one of the most fascinating and troubling aspects of humanity's relationship with apocalyptic thinking. Consider the Chinese quasi-Christian sect known as Eastern Lightning, or the Church of the Almighty God, established in 1991 and banned in 1995. This group espouses the distinctive belief that Jesus Christ has reincarnated as a Chinese woman. The sect gained notoriety not only for its radical beliefs, but also for alleged criminal activities, including mass abductions and the murder of a 37-year-old saleswoman. Its adherents were fervent believers in the Mayan doomsday prophecy, which predicted the world's demise on December 21, 2012. But apocalyptic beliefs aren't new. Montanism, an early Christian sect founded by Montanus in Phrygia during the 2nd century CE, provides a historical parallel. Montanus claimed to be the sole oracle of the Paraclete or Spirit of Truth mentioned in the Bible. This led thousands of Christian villagers to abandon their homes and livelihoods, converging on a field between the villages of Timian and Papuza, eagerly awaiting Christ's return. In the late 19th century, American evangelist Dwight Moody, founder of the Moody Church, ignited evangelical fervor that persisted into the 20th century. Moody dismissed contemporary biblical interpretations and evolutionary theory, declaring that Christ's second coming was imminent. His fundamentalist ideologies resonated with numerous apocalyptic sects, many drawing inspiration from the New Testament's book of Revelation. While some apocalyptic groups waited passively for predicted doomsdays, others took proactive approaches. Some sects went so far as to attempt expediting the apocalypse, believing they could precipitate the end of the world if it didn't happen naturally. The tragic power of such beliefs becomes clear when we consider that the phrase "drinking the Kool-Aid," often used humorously today, actually refers to the mass suicide in Jonestown, Guyana, in 1978. 908 members of the People's Temple cult, under their leader, Reverend Jim Jones's direction, ingested cyanide-laced Flavor Aid, a horrific event that highlighted the devastating power of apocalyptic manipulation. These marginal religious groups often hold beliefs so incomprehensible to mainstream society that the tragic fates of their followers are sometimes downplayed or dismissed. Yet they reveal something profound about human psychology: our fascination with endings, our desire to find meaning in chaos, and our willingness to seek certainty in an uncertain world. The pattern repeats throughout history. Charismatic leaders claiming special knowledge about the end times, followers abandoning rational thinking in favor of absolute certainty, and societies struggling to understand how intelligent people can be drawn into such obviously destructive belief systems. While humans debate and predict various earthly apocalypses, the universe itself is writing the ultimate doomsday scenario on a scale that dwarfs all our terrestrial concerns. Freeman Dyson's groundbreaking calculations, devised before awareness of dark energy, illustrated futuristic cosmic events that might culminate in what we could call a cosmocalypse, universal calamity occurring anywhere from 10 to 11 billion years from now. With current hypotheses pointing toward absolute proton stability, there's room to believe protons might never decay. However, if they aren't stable, studies suggest that half of them have decay timelines exceeding 10 to the power of 34 years. If superintelligent life forms can resourcefully manage their energy and material assets, they might sustain existence indefinitely. They might even strategize to prevent proton decay, perhaps utilizing quantum mechanics phenomena like the watched pot effect, which reveals deceleration in decay rates under observation. But the shadow of cosmocalypse looms, threatening complete universal annihilation, possibly within 10 to 100 billion years. Discoveries of dark energy and insights from string theory have painted new apocalyptic scenarios that Dyson couldn't have anticipated. What will become of our universe in billions of years? Current cosmology suggests 5 conceivable catastrophic culminations: the Big Chill, the Big Crunch, the Big Rip, the Big Snap, and death bubbles. For approximately 14 billion years, our universe has steadfastly expanded. The Big Chill describes eternal expansion, ushering the universe into a frigid, pitch-black void, devoid of life or activity. During Dyson's era, this chilling end was considered the most likely outcome. Stars would burn out, black holes would evaporate, and eventually even protons might decay, leaving nothing but cold, empty space expanding forever. Conversely, the Big Crunch posits a universe contraction phenomenon, drawing cosmic structures back into a colossal collapse, an inverse Big Bang. In this scenario, gravity eventually overcomes expansion, pulling galaxies together, crushing planets, and ultimately compressing all matter and energy back into a singularity. In stark contrast, the Big Rip foresees accelerated cosmic disintegration, fragmenting galaxies, planets, and atomic structures within a finite period. This scenario involves dark energy becoming so dominant that it overcomes all other forces, literally tearing apart the fabric of space-time itself. First, galaxies would separate beyond the observable horizon. Then solar systems would be torn apart. Eventually, even atoms would be ripped apart as space expanded faster than light could travel. The Big Snap involves a sudden phase transition in space-time itself, where the vacuum of space transitions to a lower energy state, essentially rewriting the laws of physics and destroying everything that exists under current physical laws. Death bubbles represent perhaps the most unsettling scenario. Regions of space where the fundamental properties of reality itself change, expanding at the speed of light and annihilating everything in their path. These bubbles could form spontaneously anywhere in the universe and would be completely undetectable until they arrived. Which scenario bears greater probability depends largely on dark energy's enigmatic behavior. Dark energy constitutes about 70% of the universe's total mass energy, yet we understand almost nothing about its true nature. Continued spatial expansion might tip toward outcomes varying from big chill to big crunch to big rip, depending on whether dark energy remains constant, diminishes to negative density, or inflates to more intense levels. Given our limited understanding of dark energy's true nature, we can only speculate about probabilities. Current estimates suggest roughly 40% chance for the big chill, 9% for the big crunch, and 1% for the big rip, with the remaining probability distributed among other exotic scenarios. These cosmic endgames operate on timescales so vast they're almost incomprehensible. Yet they represent the ultimate context for all human endeavors, the final frame that contains every human story, every civilization's rise and fall, every moment of joy and sorrow in the entire history of consciousness. While cosmic endgames unfold over billions of years, some doomsday scenarios might give us mere hours or days of warning. This brings us to a crucial question. When disaster strikes, can we actually save ourselves? A NASA simulation exercise revealed sobering insights about emergency preparedness that apply whether we're facing asteroids, nuclear attacks, or natural disasters. The exercise underscored that poorly executed evacuations could result in consequences more severe than the disasters themselves. Before mobilizing large populations, well-defined plans must be established and effectively communicated to all authorities. It was unanimously agreed that incorrect evacuation procedures posed greater threats than the meteorite impact being simulated. The simulation revealed the necessity of appointing a single, authoritative entity equipped with cutting-edge technology for graphic and topographic communication. This entity would need capabilities to analyze geographical population density, serve as liaison between media outlets and relocation coordinators, and manage comprehensive mapping of primary exit routes with predetermined optimal destinations for all potential impact zones. A key challenge involved deciding when and how to inform the public about mandatory relocations. Premature announcements could incite widespread panic, causing rash actions and counterproductive movements. The location of predicted impact dramatically influences evacuation strategies. A land impact would necessitate estimating zones affected by subsequent fireballs and blast radii, plus areas prone to hurricane-like conditions. An ocean impact would trigger tsunamis, demanding distinctly different evacuation approaches. Impact zones near volcanic areas could spread ash, threatening aviation transportation, while high winds could elevate debris plumes over vast distances. In scenarios where impact zones include nuclear facilities, immediate environments would face contamination from hazardous materials, with wind-borne debris potentially spreading dangerous substances over great distances, making air dangerous to breathe. Beyond merely evacuating people to safety, authorities must address displaced populations' physical needs: food, water, shelter, clothing, medical supplies, and security. Successfully relocating individuals is only the beginning of managing challenging tasks. disasters frequently incapacitate power grids, necessitating evacuation completion and immediate needs satisfaction without electricity or phone lines. Sometimes, responders must operate with no external communication whatsoever. Individuals from impacted and surrounding areas might succumb to panic or desperation, leading to what we imagine in doomsday scenarios: people moving outward into nearby communities, potentially causing vandalism, looting, and rioting as they scramble for survival provisions. With authorities under extreme pressure and resources stretched thin, volatile situations could spiral out of control quickly. History provides numerous instances where crowds under emergency circumstances have overreacted, panicked, or engaged in dangerous behaviors, including stampedes and crowd crush scenarios. The tragic Hillsborough disaster illustrates these dangers perfectly. In April 1989, 96 football fans lost their lives when approximately 10,100 fans attempted to enter the small Leppings Lane end of Hillsborough Stadium, where only 7 pens provided standing room viewing. With the game approaching, pressure mounted as just under half the fans had entered while approximately 5,700 awaited entry. 10 minutes before kickoff, 2,000 fans crowded into pens 3 and 4, causing intense compression among those closest to barriers. Some individuals attempted escape by climbing high fences or being pulled to higher spectator tiers. As the structure in pen 3 shifted, progressive crowd collapse followed, leading to tragic loss of life. Investigations determined the incident resulted from insufficient crowd control, compounded by police planning errors, stadium design flaws, and emergency response delays. These lessons apply to any mass emergency. The preservation of life hinges on meticulously devised and executed plans, efficient resource coordination, and clear communication to prevent panic and confusion. Authorities must address not only immediate threats, but also cascading aftermath that accompanies disasters on such scales. While we've explored cosmic disasters and nuclear winters, there's another form of apocalyptic thinking that shapes contemporary society: environmental doomsday scenarios. Environmental movements have frequently harnessed apocalyptic imagery to evoke fear and raise awareness about looming dangers, and understanding this rhetoric reveals important insights about how apocalyptic thinking functions in modern society. Frederick Buell, in his book From Apocalypse to Way of Life, explores how environmental movements use apocalyptic rhetoric across the political spectrum. The concept of apocalypse in Western culture encompasses more than just dramatic world endings. Buell identifies 4 aspects of Judeo-Christian apocalyptic tradition that enrich environmental messaging. First, there's the element of sudden rupture or dislocation from the past, highlighting unexpected and potentially catastrophic changes occurring or anticipated. This signifies breaking from normal patterns, emphasizing how current environmental changes represent unprecedented departures from historical norms. Second, the tradition involves sober narratives outlining how this rupture can lead to violent and disorienting endings unless changes are made. These narratives serve as warnings, urging immediate action to avert impending environmental disaster. Third, there's cosmic revelation, often considered Gnostic or mystical, that unveils the true meaning of rupture and potential ending. This revelation brings hope and promise of redemption, suggesting positive change possibilities. In environmental contexts, this might involve recognizing humanity's proper relationship with nature, or understanding our role in cosmic systems. Finally, the tradition involves final judgment, where an omniscient creator separates saved from damned, providing moral frameworks for understanding action consequences. In environmental apocalyptic thinking, this judgment might come from nature itself, climate systems, or future generations. When applied to climate change concerns, these theological insights reveal similarities in narrative structures and opportunities to reinterpret what's at stake. Stefan Scrimsher argues these perspectives offer three valuable insights for addressing environmental challenges. First, apocalyptic narratives reveal deep skepticism toward human structures and powers, underscoring modernist illusions of human control challenged by environmental disorder. This aspect highlights limitations of human capability in managing natural systems, prompting reevaluation of contemporary environmental approaches. Paradoxically, the second insight emphasizes prominent human roles in apocalyptic scenarios. This perspective encourages individuals to identify appropriate moral responses and choose alignment with good in unfolding cosmic dramas. Moral responses vary according to cultural analyses of environmental causation. For instance, following the devastating English storm of November 1703, the nation observed a day of repentance led by the king and dignitaries, showcasing collective moral response. Today, focus might shift toward social justice calls, reducing conspicuous consumption, or advocating cultural transformation. Finally, apocalypse can serve as cathartic experience, unveiling underlying world issues. Scrimsher suggests apocalyptic revelation exposes corruptions in social relations, relationships with non-human life, and modern obsessions with world domination. Understanding environmental disruptions as apocalyptic events isn't just about inciting fear or adopting fatalistic mindsets. It's a call to recognize and address what needs changing both individually and collectively in relation to the world. Addressing these issues requires introspection and commitment to redefining humanity's interaction with environment and each other. This environmental apocalyptic thinking serves multiple functions. It mobilizes action by creating urgency, provides moral frameworks for understanding environmental responsibilities, and offers possibilities for redemption through changed behavior. However, it also risks creating fatalism, overwhelming individuals with the scale of problems, or being dismissed as alarmist rhetoric. The key insight is that apocalyptic environmental rhetoric isn't simply about predicting disaster. It's about using the power of ultimate consequences to motivate immediate action and fundamental changes in how we relate to our planet. As we reach the end of our journey through doomsday scenarios, we're left with a profound paradox. We've explored how humanity might end through cosmic accidents, nuclear winters, asteroid impacts, environmental collapse, cosmic disasters billions of years in the future, or simply the statistical likelihood that we're living closer to our species' conclusion than its beginning. Yet here we are, still existing, still creating, still hoping, still building for futures we may never see. Perhaps that's the most remarkable thing about human beings, our ability to live fully while knowing that everything ends. The various doomsday scenarios we've examined serve different psychological and social functions. Some, like asteroid defense, motivate practical preparation. Others, like nuclear winter studies, serve as deterrents against destructive behavior. Environmental apocalyptic thinking mobilizes action on climate change. Cosmic endgame scenarios provide ultimate context for human existence. But all of them share a common thread. They force us to confront the fundamental questions of what matters when time is limited, what we owe to future generations, and how we should live, knowing that neither we, individually, nor our species collectively will last forever. The scientists, philosophers, and researchers whose work we've explored today aren't pessimists or doomsday cultists. They're realists grappling with the most fundamental questions of existence. Their calculations, theories, and preparations don't diminish human achievement. They illuminate its preciousness. Whether humanity has another 1,000 years or another billion, whether we'll face nuclear winter or cosmic heat death, Whether we're living in a simulation or base reality, we still wake up each day with choices to make. We can still love, create, discover, and build. We can still work to prevent the preventable disasters and prepare for the inevitable ones. Perhaps Jorge Luis Borges was right that immortality would be a nightmare. Perhaps the knowledge of endings, personal and cosmic, is what gives meaning to our brief moments in the sun. The countdown isn't just toward doomsday. It's a reminder that every day, every choice, every moment of consciousness is part of a magnificent and finite story. In the end, the question isn't whether we're doomed. Everything in the universe is temporary. The question is what we do with the time we have, individually and collectively, before the final countdown reaches zero. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the science of endings. I'm your host, Ryan Martin, with The Conspiracy Tapes. If this episode challenged your thinking or sparked new questions, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Your support helps spread the conversation and keeps us exploring the boundaries of science, mystery, and human curiosity. For more mind-bending explorations into existential risks, scientific revolutions, and the mysteries that shape our universe, check out Skoob, the AI-powered podcast app with over 1,500 expertly curated episodes inspired by best-selling nonfiction books and cutting-edge research. Download Skoob now from the App Store or Play Store and keep pushing the limits of what we can know, one episode at a time. Until next time, keep questioning. And remember, sometimes the way we end the story matters just as much as how it began.